as it is. So we've got a few seconds before others will join. Yeah. So this morning we're going to continue with chapter 1. In fact, I'm going to go through to the end of the chapter. It's just a few verses where Arjuna is pouring his heart out, basically. He's explaining to Krishna all his concerns, and Krishna is, as the dearmost friend, is hearing him in a very, what would you say, a compassionate mood and contemplative mood, and just waiting to see where Arjuna is going with all of this, exactly where he's going to end up. We get the sense that Krishna maybe knows where he's going to end up, but it's very interesting how the relationship is there as a friend. So Krishna is certainly hearing his friend and hearing his lamentations on the situation that he finds himself in. So we just begin by offering our obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter of his lotus feet. O spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, you are kindly preaching the words of Lord Chaitanya Dev and delivering the Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. We offer our humble obeisances unto Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we will read from text number 44 of the first chapter. And as I say, I want to just quickly sort of summarize what's being said by Arjuna and then finish this chapter. So text number 44. Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yadrajya sukalobhena hantum svajanam udyataha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world. But Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Om Magana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master is forcing me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus. I was listening to a very nice lecture yesterday by Jagatarini Mataji, who was speaking in Melbourne Temple in Australia. And she was making many nice points in her presentation. And one of the points that she was making was that when we read Bhagavad-gita or Srimad Bhagavatam or any other of the Vaishnava literatures, we can have a tendency to distance ourselves from the dilemma that's being presented, and throughout the history of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-gita, there's dilemma. That is life. Life is quite a dilemma. How to act, how not to act, how to love and how to receive love, how to all the things to be done in life. So it's a great dilemma. So the tendency is quote unquote devotees is to think that, and she's explaining this very nicely, is to think, oh yes, I'm not like Arjuna. Yeah, I'm a devotee, and I'm preparing to commit greatly sinful acts driven by the desire, etc. We distance ourselves. So she was encouraging that we try and relate what's being said to our own existence in this world, and how we may be pushed in different ways to fulfill our desires. We may not right now be thinking of killing our own brother, father, or mother. But Prabhupada points out there are many such instances in the history of the world. Wow, to kill your brother, to kill your mother, to kill them. Wow. Or to kill your father. What a thing to do. But compelled by desire, kama esha, what is it that forces a person to act as though practically unwillingly? In Krishna's answer to Arjuna's question later in the Gita, he says that it is kama esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudbhava, mahano vijanam. What is that? Oh gosh, sorry, my verses. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudbhava, mahashano mahapam vijanamiha vairinam. It is lust, only Arjuna, born of the desire, born of the mode of passion, which is later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. So it's this lust, insatiable lust, that is there in the heart, which it pushes forward. And the verses that we're hearing in this section are really highlighting that desire and lust, anger, and greed, madness, illusion, and envy. So those are the 6 qualities to be distance ourselves from: the lust, the anger, the greed, because lust is later transformed into wrath, become angry. Why can't I have this kingdom? I want this kingdom. This kingdom should be mine. And this inheritance should be mine, or my brother should not have got this, or my brother's being favored by my family. And the amazing thing is, Prabhupada's pointed out that there are many such instances in the history of the world. So it seems like the more you get, the more you want. We notice that in a lot of these histories that we do here that have happened in the history of the world are emperors and kings and royal families where they kill some of the queens, or there's a plot to kill this person. We hear that in Mahabharata also, that Kamsa was so desirous of power that he drove out his father Ugrasen and imprisoned him in different ways, and then he was going to kill his sister immediately. Now, you could say, well, naturally he'd heard this omen that the 8th child born of your sister, Devaki, is going to be the person who will kill you. So he thinks, but immediately, so this is the world of duality. Immediately he thinks, okay, grab her, kill her. Wow, what happened to the loving exchange? He was there driving the couple back after their wedding. So this is the way of the material world. This is the way of the material world, the world of duality. There's no actual love unless we can come to the spiritual platform. There's different degrees of the lust in the material platform, be through passion, ignorance, and goodness. We are influenced by, we may act in a pious way or an impious way or a very sinful way. So this is the shades of the modes of material nature and how they work. So let's pick this up back where Arjuna begins to make this. I'm just going to read the verses, not the purports, I don't think, but just to get Arjuna's argument. And he says, so it begins around text 30. He says, I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Text 31, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle. Nor can I, my dear Krishna, my dear friend Krishna, doesn't say that, but my dear friend Krishna will say, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So it's about Arjuna, his situation. And in this way, he's thinking. Nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. No good can come from this, he's saying. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusudan, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-laws, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the 3 worlds, let alone this earth. Text number 36, sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? So we get this mood. It's very logical what Arjuna is presenting, but what we're going to suggest that he's lost sight of the bigger picture. And this is the tendency in our existence in this world. We lose sight of the reality, and we are swallowed up to different degrees by the illusion of our existential situation in this world. I am happy, I am sad, I am the younger brother of this person, I am so many things of this world which consume us and force us to act in different ways. So Arjuna is a very exalted personality, and naturally as a Kshatriya, he's feeling, I am a powerful warrior, yes, but if it means that I have to utilize this power and skill that I have, this potency that I have, then if it means that I have to do that to do ill to others, then I reject it. So he has that power to want to give it up. He's not interested in his self-aggrandizement. But it's showing, because he's overcome by the situation, which is very difficult. So don't underestimate his position. It's so difficult for him. He's faced with his grandfather, he's faced with his cousin brothers, he's faced with his teachers and relatives and friends, and he's thinking, wow, I can't, this is crazy. Why would I want to do this? And he goes into that mode, which is not the bigger picture, but it shrinks his consciousness down to friends, enemies, brothers, cousins, etc. So, and understandably so. And as Jagatrini Mataji was making the point, and we are reiterating that point today, is that we will find ourselves in different dilemmas throughout our lives, which will tend to consume our consciousness to the point where we can easily lose the Krishna conscious perspective, the highest Krishna conscious perspective. So I'm sure if you reflect on this, you'll see how that happens again and again and again as we go through all the different stages of our existence. So the good news is that this is a great training field for us. And it can be begun from the very beginning of our life. Komaramachared Prajna, Dharma in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj prays like that. This process should be begun from the very beginning of our life, not in the later stage just. The later stage is there, yes, but it has to be applied from childhood, from the very beginning, so that one can become trained. Because the sooner one becomes trained, the sooner he will be able to, or he or she will be able to take the next step in a way which will advance the cause of our devotional service. And the sooner we take up the process, the sooner we'll know how to act in the next situation that we may find ourselves in. And then we will be, quote unquote, trained up. We'll be trained up. And when we get trained up, then everything happens the way what should we say, the way Krishna wants it to. So I'll go back into these verses that are helping us to understand the situation for Arjuna and Krishna. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Text 37 and 38. O Janardhan, although these men, overtaken by greed, so he sees that, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? So it's how amazing is that? Yeah. So Arjuna doesn't see how Maya is snuck up on the back end. It's kind of like in the battle, you've got people facing you front, and then somebody might sneak around the side or the back. So he's seeing how these men that are standing in front of me, they're overtaken by greed and lust and avarice, and they're willing to sacrifice everything to gain their desired result. But should we, why should we, with knowledge of this sin, engage in these acts? So it's very meritorious, his statements. Why should we? But in that way, Maya is encouraging that we, again, reduce our consciousness into the situation that we find ourselves in, and we begin to act in a dualistic way. That's another point that's very important to understand. We think ourselves often, in fact, continually, actually, as a separate identity from Krishna. There's Krishna, and then there's us. There's me. We are individuals. But we are achincha beda abeda tattva. We are simultaneously different, but one with Krishna. We are one and different. And actually, we have no separate identity. For example, the hand. We look at the hand. It has no separate existence from the body, but it has a separate function of grasping and taking and picking and doing things. So it's simultaneously one and different, but it has no separate existence other than its relationship with the body. In a similar way, the biggest illusion for us all is the bodily identification, where we think ourselves separate from Krishna when actually we are not separate from Krishna. And Devamrita Maharaj explains that very nicely in many of his lectures. We think so, therefore we hear, oh, we should be Krishna's servant 24 hours a day. It should be all surrendered to Krishna. And we can easily get into the thought, well, what about me? What about me? Maybe, can we make it 50-50 here? Krishna's got a lot of stuff going on for him, and I haven't got much. I had the alarm bell, a little red flag. This is the bodily concept of life, that I am different from Krishna. Okay, let's make it 75 for Krishna. Make it 95 for Krishna. But what about me? I'm this little entity that's separate and needs some separate gratification, existence, enjoyment, whatever you want to call it. And this is how the power of Maya is so powerful. Queen Devahuti says to Kapila Dev, she says, I'm hearing everything that you're explaining in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. And by hearing, I'm seeing how amazing the arrangement of the Supreme Lord is, that I feel that it's inextricable how to separate the self from the illusion of the body, the three modes of material nature, the time element, all the manifestations that we're existing in. It's so perfectly done. It's so perfectly bewildering for the living entity who's embodied and therefore naturally thinks, well, I'm a separate entity. Makes complete sense in one sense, and in a broader sense, it actually doesn't. Because we're not this body. This body is temporary. It will be destroyed. And we're thinking, I am this body. I am this. These are my relatives. These are my friends. This is my country. But that's not the bigger picture. That's the smaller picture. So continuing on, Arjuna is certainly seeing things. He says, text 39, with the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished. He's very intelligent. And thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. So he's going not just on the small side of his illusion, he's going to the bigger side. Well, okay, there's these people, but what about the whole dynasty? When the dynasty is destroyed, so this is the Kuru dynasty, we are the upholders of Dharma, we are the emperors of the world, and we are upholding this dynasty which has been preserved for millennia to uphold, because it's being preserved because the Brahmins are guiding and the Kshatriyas are upholding Dharma and this religious way of Vedic life, which brings gives the opportunity to all persons to make progress in the human form of life. This is the civilization. So he sees that if this dynasty which is ruling the earth is destroyed, then what's going to happen, he's very clear on it, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and the rest of the families will become involved in irreligious practices. So he's not blind to that. He's very much aware of what's going to happen. And he goes on to say, when irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. And Prabhupada speaks at length, and we've discussed that at length. That's how it all happens. One action, and there's a reaction. So the dynasty is destroyed, then what's going to happen? Irreligion is going to manifest more, and it will become prominent in the family. And when it's irreligious desires and activities start, then what's going to happen, obviously, is the women of the family will become corrupt. They won't be protected. They'll be unprotected. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Rishi, comes unwanted progeny. Oh gosh, here we go 5,000 years later, and you see what's happening. Oh, that's another huge subject, which we may not go into right now, but yeah, I won't go into it too much. Yes, let's carry on. So, unwanted progeny will raise up. And then text 41. When there is an increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. So everything goes to hell. And we see that in the world that we're living in now. Everything's very much highlighted, specifically this time, although Prabhupada in many of these purports says every 25 or 40 years or whatever it is, things become highlighted. So there's a war, and then another 20 years later, there's the Second World War, and then there's the Vietnam War, and then there's this war, and then there's this pestilence. And that's just the way of the world. But it becomes more and more hellish as time goes on. The Kshatriyas went to the battlefield, the people were at home in their villages and towns, and the fight would go on, and those persons were there because they had chosen to be there, and they decided that they were going to fight on for various reasons, and the fighting would go on, and there were rules of conduct. If one was unarmed, he would not be attacked. If one was an unwilling fighter, then he would not be attacked. There was all sorts of codes of chivalry in the fighting, yeah? And then the victorious parties would return and govern the kingdom according to, accordingly. And now we don't have that system. Now there's no rules. So the only rule is destroy whatever you, in whatever way you, whether it's germ warfare, whether it's gas warfare, whether it's atomic warfare, whether it's ballistic missile warfare, just destroy. And you can do it in the middle of the night, all the better. You can do it under cover of dark, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So, yeah, it doesn't bode well. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 10th chapter, verses I think 3 to 7, somewhere in that part, just towards the beginning of that 10th, Krishna's return to Dwarka. Srila Prabhupada addresses pretty much the kind of situation that comes up every 25 to whatever number of years between wars and massive pestilences. And what we hear these days is we hear that there should be a one world order. Somebody has to take control of this world. It's in so much chaos, and no one will disagree, whatever party you, where you vote and act, it doesn't matter. Everyone will agree that the whole world is out of control in so many aspects. You know better than me all the different aspects where it's out of control. And therefore, there's a great need. And Srila Prabhupada addresses that in that part of the Bhagavatam, where Krishna's returning to Dwarka. And he says that there's always a need, there's a cry for a one world, a united nations, and a one world order, a government that will be able to bring order and peace and prosperity to the world. Yay, yay. That's what everyone wants. But he points out so wonderfully and clearly that only kings like Yudhisthira Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, and all the great personalities, they are able to govern the world. They are able to bring in the system that is the divine system of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chaturvarnya maya shishtam guna karma vibhagasat tashaham kartam avyayam vidya kartam avyayam. This system was created by me, Krishna says, according to the modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them. So this is the divine system to bring order to the world. And if it's followed by good souls, Prabhupada calls it, he says, good souls. If we are able to follow that system, everything can be adjusted. But any other attempt, you will never satisfy. And again, this is Prabhupada speaking so clearly in that part of those verses, the purports. He said, whatever ideology and that is being promoted, whatever a manifesto and agenda that's being promoted, it will be a dismal failure, because the agenda that's being promoted will not benefit all people in all circumstances in all time, not like Krishna's perfect plan. It will maybe suit that group of people, that group of countries that decide to go, but it will not be suitable to others. Therefore, there will never be any peace, and it will be a dismal thing. And what we find is these attempts, it's to modern ideas of one world order, it's to dominate and coerce and force people to follow some kind of indoctrination, a concocted idea. And they try as they may say, well, we want to benefit the whole world. Okay, we'll take you on face value what you're saying. You can try, but you will not succeed, because you don't have the training, you don't have the capacity, you don't have the heart. Like Arjuna, you don't have Arjuna's heart. You don't have the heart of a real Kshatriya, a real leader whose only desire is to benefit the people of the world. And that is Krishna's desire. So we see that's the whole system, Krishna's desire, so that the Brahmanas are wanting to fulfill Krishna's desire. So they give the guidance. They give the conclusions of Shastra. The Kshatriyas, they want to enforce it. They want to put it into action. They want to manage it to govern, and they do it with the heart that is completely Krishna conscious. And your Vaishyas, they're not greedy, lusty persons, but they're being tempered from that mode of nature, which is there, the tendency to accumulate. They're being guided by the Kshatriyas. That make sure you don't make too much profit here, because it's not all about dominating me, the Kshatriya. It's not all about just getting glorified as a Brahmana. It's not all about getting some more money out of the people. That's not what it's about. By nature, you like to look after cows, and you like to trade, and you're able to, in an entrepreneurial kind of way, do things. It seems to come naturally to you. So do that. But I will make sure that you are reminded not to exploit those who are dependent on you. And that's the mood of the Kshatriya. So he's able to do that, and he's able to convince the Vaishyas. Oh yes, yeah, what you're saying is true, my lord. And let us continue in our business in a way which is beneficial for society. So again, the heart is purified all the way through the system. And then the Shudras are explained, their quality is humility. Wow, we can't get any humility in the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, or Vaishyas. What to speak of the Shudras? But actually the Brahmanas were humble. The Kshatriyas were humble and gentle, but powerful and kind. And the Vaishyas were humble and were able to take care of everyone through their economic systems, simplified systems, not artificial technology, which is a cheating process. God, there's cheating everywhere you look, and we're blind to it, and half of the people that are doing the cheating can't even see it. That's the power of Maya Shakti. So back to the Shudras. So the Shudras, their quality is humility. And I gave an example the other day there. I was just reading it in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it was Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Gopal Bhatta Goswami was wanting to go and join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they were traveling to Puri, and he had one assistant, or one person also, who wanted to travel with him. And the person who was traveling, he was a wonderful devotee of the Lord. He was a devotee of Lord Ram, and he said that let me, Goswami Maharaj, let me take your, let me carry your belongings, because you have things to carry. So please let me carry them. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami was saying, no, he said, let's just travel as friends, and that way it will be very relaxed and so on. I would rather that, out of his humility. But Ramdas, I think it was Ramdas, he was a devotee of Lord Ramchandra. He said, no, he said, you're a Brahmana, and I'm born of a Sudra family, and it is my great delight to serve you. It brings me the greatest pleasure. And see the humility. And eventually, eventually, Gopal Bhatta agreed. He says, okay, if this really please, and he's like, yeah, if you don't do this, I'll be so unhappy the whole journey. So they agreed, okay, if you can carry these things. So this was the mood. And just see the qualities. The qualities are there. So this is what's being manifest for all the people. So I'll just go back to the purport a little bit and see what Arjuna says next in text 42. He says, due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family tradition, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. All kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. So community projects are required. There needs to be community projects. The growing or planting of trees, the digging of wells for, wait till you hear this, for pure water. What happened? Not so long back, rivers were never polluted. It was never heard of. Why would you do such a crazy things? The cities of the world were built on riverbanks. Why? Because that's what you depend on for water. And it should never be polluted. sources of water. But because there's no Kshatriyas, no Brahmanas to advise, no Kshatriyas to enforce, and all we have is quote-unquote entrepreneurs unchecked by those higher levels of society, then they for it. Their desire is rampant, and to make profit at any cost. Why wouldn't you? Because you're an out of control, unguided Vaishya. The field is open. There's no Kshatriyas to stop. There's no Brahmanas to advise. And it's like, I want to make something that will make profit and I'll be happy. So all the community projects all go down the gurgler. Family welfare activities are devastated. Oh boy. And then someone else would get up and amongst all this and say, what do you mean welfare activities are devastated? There was one conversation in the Dandavats that was highlighted, Srila Prabhupada speaking to one man in Europe somewhere. He had a Dutch name or something. And the man was saying, yes, he was saying, yes, my department is a welfare department, and we're interested, this is on the level, I think, United Nations kind of stuff. We're interested in uplifting the lot and seeing to the lot, the benefits for the laborer classes. And he said like that. And then Srila Prabhupada's response was, first, you have to have a brain department. And the man said, I couldn't hear that so much. And he said, oh, yeah, but we want to look after the labor class. And it went back and forward like this about 6 or 8 times. And Prabhupada just kept trying to bring him back to see that without the brain, the whole thing won't work. So again, you need the brain, you need the strong arms to protect, then you need the belly, and then you need the legs to be protected. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So all these attempts will always fail. And so Prabhupada saw that, and I wrote a little comment in that article saying that the way Prabhupada was, it appeared that you could be very quote-unquote dogmatic. And you could say, oh, it's very dogmatic. The man's saying this, and he's saying this, and saying, and Prabhupada just keeps coming back, but you need a brain. You have to have an intelligent class that won't work, and so on and so on. So it seems, oh, Prabhupada was very dogmatic, but then I was just thinking it was, you could call it godmatic instead of dogmatic. You could say he was very godmatic. He wasn't shifted from his position, and he was hearing very clearly what the man was saying. He was actually hearing, but responding to, and then gradually towards middle to end of the article, short article, the man said, oh God. He said that I can see what you mean. That's paraphrasing. It was only about 5 words or something to that effect. He said, oh, I can see what you mean. And he got it. He didn't go too far with it, but he got it. He said, oh, I can see. And so, yeah. So that all these welfare activities, we can say we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, save the whales, save the poor, feed the poor. There's so much going on. But if it's not got God at the center, Krishna at the center, it's demonic. It's a demonic attempt. And we hear all about it in Bhagavad-gita as we go on. I have conquered this person, I've destroyed that person, this person's my enemy, I will destroy them in due course of time, but I will also give in charity, and in this way I will rejoice. And this is the demoniac mentality. Unbeneficial works that are meant to destroy the world. So, where are we up to? We're up at text 43. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Text 44. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Now, I was going to go on, but what's the time? I think we're not. I'm just going to do that text 44. We've done a whole review. I hope that's okay. And then somebody else can continue 45 and 46 to the last two verses of this chapter. So I hope the main point, I think, or one of the main points I've been trying to establish here or make is that this idea of the total, I was going to call it the big picture, but it's the total picture. Krishna consciousness is the total picture, the supreme absolute truth in all its facets and in all its facets. And then there's the smaller picture. That small picture can get as small as an Indragopa. You can become so small, the smallest created entity, and that's the small picture of life there, and it goes up more and more and more and more and more through all the 8,400,000 species of life. And even in the human form of life, we can have a small picture. So Krishna consciousness means to expand the consciousness from Duratma to Mahatma, from cripple-mindedness. And we're not meant to, in the human form of life, to be cripple-minded. We're meant to be broad-minded. And the broad picture will bring us that everything has its order. Nature is working under Krishna's direction, he says. Mayajakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. I think it was Vaisheshika Prabhu was making that point too. He's making it, we think ourselves separate and we think, I've got my plan. But actually, if we read carefully Bhagavad-gita, it's not our plan. It's when we just have the desire, and then Maya makes a plan, and we are forced to act according to that, the impulses of the desire and hate and the three modes of material nature, and think that it's our plan. I made this plan. No, you just had a desire, and then according to that desire and your past karmas, you function. And you think, what is that other verse? It says that the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, considers himself to be the doer of activities which are actually carried out by the material nature. So that's, what is that? Ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa. Ahankara vimudatma. The vimudatma, very foolish. This bewildered living entity thinks himself to be the doers. This is my plan, but actually it's not. It's Krishna says he reciprocates according to our surrender. So if you don't surrender very much, he gives you that deal. You don't want to surrender much? Okay, here's the plan you want. I'll give you this plan. And you're forced to act in so many different ways. So it's not a good idea to have your own plan, because you blow it every time, because you're influenced by the modes of nature and your bodily identification. And Krishna says, if we just and again Prabhupada said, if the good souls, if we surrender to Krishna's plan, and Krishna says that at the end of Bhagavad-gita, Sarvadhamam parityagya mamikam saranam braja aham tvam sarvi papibhyo mokshayasami masajaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and activities in this world and surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all your sinful reactions. That's what we want to get freed from. That's why we're working so hard. We're trying to overcome our sinful reactions, our suffering, our situation in this world. So we want to overcome it. And Krishna says, I will deliver you from the whole thing. Don't be afraid. Krishna says that, and he has that capacity to do it. And we simply have to surrender to Krishna. And then take shelter of Krishna's plan. And Krishna's plan, as we've been discussing, is there for everyone according to their situation, and everyone can be engaged. And that's the Bhagavatam speaks of that at great length, according to our capacity, and we can progress in the human form of life. So I'll finish at that point. I hope something has been of some benefit. As, for a meditation for all of us. Yes, I am trying to meditate on all these things also, and try to, whatever we're faced with in life, try and deal with it as best we possibly can in as Krishna conscious way as we can, and then pray to Krishna to allow us to not lose sight of the total picture, of the big picture. And in this way we can progress. Tatenu kampam susamikshamanam punjana evat kitam papakam ridvagva purvir vidadham namaste jiveyo mukti pade sadayabhak. And any person who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the time patiently suffering the reactions to his own past misdeeds, and continuing to worship you with great faith and determination, certainly becomes eligible for liberation, because it has become his rightful claim. So it's such a wonderful verse that whatever trials and tribulations we face, if we continue the process and realize that what we're experiencing is due to our past sinful activities, and by continuing to serve Krishna and trying to our best capacity to surrender to Krishna, and gradually it will become our rightful claim that we can go back home, back to Godhead. That's Krishna's promise. Kuntiya pratajani hi name bhakta pranashati. Declare it boldly, O Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. So, once again, thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koda Vaishnav Brinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.